Why is it so hard to quit drinking even when we know it's not good for us? Welcome back to the Quit Drinking Alcohol podcast. I'm Dylan, and I'm here to guide you on your journey to sobriety. In our last episode, we talked about setting long-term sobriety goals and building a fulfilling future. Today, we're diving into the science behind addiction, how alcohol impacts the brain, and why understanding this can help you strengthen your recovery. In this episode, we'll explore how alcohol interacts with the brain's reward system, the cycle of addiction, and practical ways to use this knowledge to your advantage. Let's dive in. When I first started learning about the science of addiction, I had a big aha moment. I realized that my struggles with drinking weren't about willpower or character flaws. They were rooted in how alcohol affects the brain. That understanding shifted my perspective and gave me the confidence to approach sobriety differently. Understanding the science of addiction doesn't just explain why quitting is so hard, it also shows us that change is possible. Once I understood the mechanics of how alcohol had rewired my brain, I felt more equipped to break free from those patterns and start creating healthier ones. So, how does alcohol affect the brain? Let's start with the reward system. When you drink, alcohol triggers the release of dopamine, chemical that makes you feel good. This creates a sense of pleasure or relaxation, which reinforces the behavior. Your brain learns to associate drinking with feeling good, and over time, it starts craving that same response. But here's the catch. The more you drink, the less your brain naturally produces dopamine. It becomes reliant on alcohol to feel good, and that's where dependence starts to form. You may find yourself needing more alcohol to get the same effect. It's a phenomenon we know as tolerance. Eventually, this can lead to withdrawal symptoms when you stop drinking, like anxiety, irritability, or even physical discomfort or death. These symptoms aren't just unpleasant, they're your brain's way of signaling that it's struggling to regain balance. So let's take a deeper look at what's often referred to as the cycle of addiction. This cycle explains why drinking can feel so automatic and why it's so hard to break the habit, even when we know it's not serving us. It often starts with a trigger, something that creates stress, discomfort, or even excitement. Triggers can be external, like a stressful day at work or a social event, or they can be internal, like feelings of anxiety, loneliness, or even boredom. And once we've experienced the trigger, we begin to experience craving. And this is when our brain starts signaling that it wants relief or reward that it associates with drinking. This craving can feel incredibly intense and it can be very difficult to ignore, especially if drinking has been our go-to response to all of these different situations for a long time. Then after the craving, we have the behavior. This is when we reach for a drink. In this moment, it feels like the solution to whatever problem we're experiencing. Alcohol provides that temporary sense of relief or pleasure because it activates the brain's reward system. But this relief is short-lived. And then after the behavior, we experience the consequences. After drinking, we might feel regret, guilt, or even physical symptoms like fatigue, nausea, or headache. On top of that, alcohol often makes the original problem that we were dealing with worse. For example, stress might feel overwhelming in the moment, but it feels even more overwhelming the next day. Or our anxiety might spike when the alcohol begins to wear off. And this is how the cycle of addiction reinforces itself. The next time a trigger appears, our brain remembers the temporary relief that alcohol provided, and the craving kicks in again. And over time, this pattern becomes deeply ingrained, making it feel automatic or even inevitable. And we have to realize also that the consequence itself can become a reinforcement. The consequence from drinking can be the thing that triggers the craving and the behavior the next day. So we want to talk about breaking the cycle. The key to breaking the cycle is awareness. When you understand how triggers, cravings, and behaviors are connected, you can start to interrupt the pattern. Instead of reaching for a drink, you can pause, you can reflect, and you can choose a different response, one that truly supports your well-being. For example, if you have some sort of stress related to something that you need to get done, instead of putting it off and having a drink, you can actually take action and get the thing done so that you don't have that trigger in the future. It's important to understand that breaking the cycle of addiction will take time and effort, but it is absolutely possible. Each time you choose a healthier response, you are teaching your brain a new way to cope and creating a foundation for lasting change. In the same way that the cycle of addiction reinforces itself, the cycle of sobriety can reinforce itself as well. So let's talk about some practical ways to use this understanding of addiction to support your sobriety. The first thing I want to talk about is recognizing your triggers. We want to be able to identify the situations or emotions that make us want to drink. Whether it's stress, boredom, social pressure, relationships, recognizing triggers is the first step to addressing them. I want to point out when I say that we want to identify situations or emotions that make us want to drink, it's important to recognize that nothing makes us drink, okay? I often use this metaphor of a car, and this situation puts fuel in the gas tank, but we are allowed to leave the car in the driveway. Just because there's fuel in the car because of the situations or emotions does not mean that we need to go for a drive. So just keep that in mind. The next thing I want to talk about is creating new rewards. Since our brain is craving the dopamine boost it associates with alcohol, we want to find alternative ways to trigger that response. This can be done through exercise, connecting with loved ones, or achieving small goals that provide the sense of reward. I work with my coaching clients and we want to structure a life that includes a lot of goals so that we are naturally receiving the dopamine that propels us forward in our life instead of reaching for a drink to get a cheap replacement. That is really what we want to be doing. Like I said, creating new rewards. Next thing that we want to do is be patient with yourself. Rewiring our brain takes time. We didn't get to the position that we're in overnight, and we're not necessarily going to get out of it overnight either. So we want to celebrate small victories along the way, and we want to remind ourselves that every positive choice we make is helping us break free from old patterns. All of those small victories are one step closer to where we want to be. The whole point of this is that understanding the science of addiction can feel like pulling back the curtain on something that's often misunderstood. It's not about weakness or willpower. It's about how alcohol changes the brain and creates patterns that can be incredibly hard to break. But the beauty of this knowledge is that it also shows us how change is possible. When you know what's happening in your brain, you can start to approach sobriety with more compassion and a clearer plan. It's no longer just about resisting the urge to drink. It's about creating new habits, building new rewards, and giving your brain time to heal. Take a moment to reflect on this. How has understanding the science of addiction changed the way I view my relationship with alcohol? If you enjoy journaling, write down your thoughts. Consider how this understanding might influence your next steps or help you navigate challenges differently. Reflection is such a powerful tool for growth, and every insight you gain brings you closer to building the life you want. That's it for today's episode. We've explored how alcohol impacts the brain, the cycle of addiction, and practical steps to use this knowledge in your sobriety journey. Understanding the science behind addiction isn't just fascinating, it's empowering. It gives you the tools to approach sobriety with clarity, compassion, and confidence. If this episode resonated with you, take time this week to reflect on your relationship with alcohol and how understanding these patterns can help you create new ones. And if you know someone who might benefit from hearing this, share this episode with them. Knowledge is a powerful way to spark change. Before we wrap up, I want to remind you to check the show notes for resources that can help you on your journey to quit drinking. Whether it's links to helpful tools, communities, or support services, these resources are there to guide and empower you. Thank you for being here with me today. I'm proud of the work you're doing, and I hope you'll join me next time as we dive into managing anxiety without alcohol, an important conversation with tools you can start using right away. Until then, take care of yourself. And remember, every step forward is a step forward toward the life you deserve.